We are very, very happy that you are taking time out of your afternoon to join us and to learn a little bit more about the calculator that we have embedded for our NCTest testing application and secure browser. My job today will be to man the chat and kind of periodically interject as Dave is presenting and pass questions along so that he can focus on the presentation piece. I would quickly like to address a couple questions I'm seeing frequently pop up in the chat. We are recording today's session. It takes WebEx a little bit to create that video. My hope is to be able to share that video with you via email tomorrow. Anyone who registered as attending, and as of about 20 minutes ago, we had a little over 2,000 people registered. So anyone who registered as attending, I should be able to send the video out tomorrow, and then you are welcome to forward that video to friends maybe who were unable to attend for whatever reason. The next 3 weeks, we are doing these webinars for each of the different grade levels, and once all of those sessions are complete, we will send out another TNN, which is our Testing News Network. That's how we originally shared the dates and times and the links that you used to register for today. So once all 3 of these sessions are done, we'll be sharing all of those links at the end. But for those of you who've registered, my hope is to get that to you tomorrow. We are fortunate today to have with us Dave Sable. Dave also did our webinars last year, and he's brought all kinds of great things to share with you today. As I said, I'm here just to man the chat and support you all and support Dave as we go through. This is the 4-function meeting. This is geared for grades 3, 4, and 5. And at this time, Dave, if you're ready, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, I'm all ready.
All right, you should be driving now.
All right, let me make sure that I can share. You know what, Beth? I don't think that I'm able to share my screen just yet.
Let's see. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Perfect. All right, there we go. Can y'all see? Oh, a little too early. There we go. Can y'all see this?
Yes, we can, Dave.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today. My name is Dave Sable. I am a teacher here in Cleveland, Ohio. I am a high school teacher, and so that is not exactly your grade level, and I can appreciate that difference. But I feel like I have a lot of great things to share with you that are definitely geared towards not just the 4-function calculator, but activities that might be very useful teaching your grade levels, and especially in the midst of the current circumstances we're in, which are quite extraordinary, is the understatement of the year. I've been working with Desmos for about 4 years now in different capacities, oftentimes doing some online webinars and in-person webinars when that was still a thing with folks from all around the country too, from a lot of different grade levels. The whole time we have a bit.ly link down here in the corner, bit.ly/NC4function, and that will take you to this Google Doc right here, which is sort of a list of kind of notes for today's session. And you'll see a lot of the things that I'm mentioning will be referenced here. If you ever wanted to go back at any point and find what was that thing he was talking about, or that he referenced, or that he said that we'd be able to follow up on later, it's probably in here. Okay. So, to that end, why are we here? Why aren't we here? We are definitely not here to share, develop theoretical knowledge about how teaching and technology work together. Desmos has done a lot of cool work on that, but we don't have the time to get into that today, unfortunately. And part of that is because of the teaching environment that we're in this year. This might look sort of familiar to you. This is kind of seems to be where we are these days. So a lot of people are looking for very practical things that we can try to get to ASAP, and that's exactly what we're here for. We're also not really here maybe unfortunately, to develop expertise in new technology and to see how that interacts with teaching. That is an ongoing practice that we're all engaged in, I know, but we only have a short amount of time today. The truth is that we are really here to kind of give you a what can instead of a how can type of presentation, where my goal here is to show you a lot of the neat things that Desmos' calculators and the activities can do for you, and then give you the tools to be able to go back and improve on those ideas as you go. But to definitely come out of this with a few things that you can try right away, and then some to go from there. You know, this might look like this was shared, you know, back in the spring. I love this meme here. You know, the best laid plans, and then things shift, and you're like, well, maybe I could still try to do it this way. And then that kind of changes as the circumstances change, and the demands from your school and your district might change. And by the time you get to the actual teaching, it looks pretty different from where we thought that we had started. So kind of in that ongoing idea of developing our practice, not only do I want you to come up with a handful of very practical things you can try right away, but like I said, that you can keep developing these tools throughout the year, and I'll give you some outlets to be able to do that. So here's the official agenda beyond the little intro we're doing right now. First, we're going to look at the 4-function calculator and also look at how that interacts with what you might need to know for the North Carolina test and how it's embedded there, or how that calculator works specifically. I want to talk a little bit about teaching with Desmos and how you can potentially use Desmos activities in the classroom asynchronously or synchronously, particularly if you're teaching virtually, which many of us are. And then also how you can potentially build with Desmos, how you can create some custom activities that you can use in your classes, you know, again, virtually, asynchronously, or synchronously. And I do plan right now, 15 minutes is my goal to leave at the very end for any kind of questions you might have. We do have a very short amount of time, and I'm going to try to hit as many key topics as I can. And I know there will be other things that you'll want to talk about, and that is perfectly fine. And I think that in the Q&A, we'll be able to filter out the most common ones there. So let's start by talking about that 4-function calculator. If we head over, and I will right now, I'm going to head over to desmos.com, and I'll show you exactly where that 4-function calculator lives. So I'm going to make a new tab here. It's going to go to desmos.com. And there we are. So on this front page of Desmos, the main tool that we kind of draw you towards is our graphing calculator, which is sort of our flagship resource that has been part of it ever since the start. But up here in Math Tools, you also see the full range of all the different math tools outside of the activities that we offer. Everything from the 4-function calculator, which we'll take a look at in a minute, all the way up to even a matrix calculator for some students down the road. So I'm going to click on that 4-function calculator and get going. So this is the basic version of what it is, right? I can go in and I can select buttons directly on the screen with operations. The answer will immediately appear here on the right side, and if I hit the enter button, it'll give me a brand new line. You'll notice that temporarily there, if I start an expression but don't finish it, it lets me know, hey, you need something else. One of the things I love about not just this tool, but a lot of the other tools that Desmos offers is that it's really geared towards early learners and students that are brand new to this technology. So if something, whether it's this or something similar, isn't working, there's often little warnings and alerts to let you know why you might not be seeing what you think you're seeing. So let's try this. It's going to nicely follow order of operations for us and report the answer in 6.5. This calculator does not give any sort of fraction conversion. There is a calculator I can show you that's one level up that does dabble in fraction conversion, and I'll show you that very briefly before we move on today. So I can hit enter. Another thing that might be important, as you often see in a lot of the calculators, is using the answer button that I can use to adjust from here. So one of the neat things about this is all these lines are editable. So I can go back up here and I can delete that one space and instead try something else. All of these expressions can also be accessed from the keyboard. So I'm hitting delete on the keyboard right here, and I'm entering directly from my keyboard. Enter also works in that sense. So all of these are dynamic in the sense that if I change a previous row that might impact that ANS response, it's going to all update live. Okay. Let's just try one more to kind of see this. And we can see again that this will delete one space, clear will delete the row, and then clear all will delete the entire screen. If that was a mistake, I can do this, and we're right back to where we started. This wrench right here gives me a few other options. It gives me projector mode. This would be particularly useful if, for example, you're projecting onto a smartboard for an entire room. It makes everything nice and big. We also have a lot of options for students with visual disabilities. Numbers can be expressed in Braille. And also we can go to reverse contrast if that's just easier on your eyes. Okay. So those are some of the basic options for the four-function calculator. One thing I'll show you before I get into some of the North Carolina testing specific calculator options is, like I mentioned, this scientific calculator. Like I said, if this is, so as you see, it looks very much like what we just saw, but there's a few other options beside it. But one of the benefits here is that now it will automatically use fraction notation instead of the division sign notation. And then I can use this switch to toggle back and forth between one representation and the other. Again, this is not an option that's going to be available in the four-function calculator, but if this is something that you want your students to have access to, the scientific calculator could be a good option. I'm not going to get too much into the other features of the scientific calculator, although this will be on display in the workshop we're doing next week on the same day and same time if you are interested. All right. Something else I want to show you before we get into some activities is how this four-function calculator interacts with the specifics of the North Carolina tests. This is linked on our note sheet right here, but I also want to show you where you can find it on the Desmos front page. If I swing all the way down here to the bottom, you'll see that there's a link for assessments. There's also one right there. So assessments, and if I swing a little bit further down, there's a big map of the US. All these dark blue states are states that use the Desmos calculator on their end of course or end of year exams. Here in North Carolina, I see some options for a direct link that will take to the general info for the North Carolina test, which you may already be familiar with that page, but also specific calculators that are geared specifically towards those tests. Now, I will tell you this, I'm going to open this PDF right here that has a little bit more information. And it does say on here something that's a little outdated, I believe. In the scientific calculator and the graphing calculator, there are some features that are not available on the testing calculator that are available on the general use calculator. And you can see some of these are some of the advanced functions that the calculator offers that are just kind of taken off the table when testing. When it comes to the four-function calculator, it makes it seem like that is true for converting decimal answers to fractions. I believe this still needs to be updated because they took the fraction conversion off of our sort of generic four-function calculator. So this is kind of a moot point because this feature is not available in the four-function calculator anywhere. So the calculator I just showed you is basically identical to what students would see on the North Carolina test. And if I go back to this page, you will see a link to the four-function calculator, a version of it for North Carolina, which, as I said, is really identical. For the scientific calculator and the grapher, it is a little different. But again, this works exactly as what I just demoed for you, and it sort of is as to be expected. All right. Just based on that four-function calculator, Beth, are there any questions that are popping up so far that we might want to hit?
Ah, there it is. Yes, there are.
Okay.
We have a question about There's the ability to switch between improper fractions and mixed numbers?
That's a good question. So again, so this is going to be slightly moot on the four-function calculator because it won't deal with fractions at all. The scientific calculator, however, will. So I'm going to go back to here to look at the scientific calculator, and I can demo that a little bit for you. Let's see here. So if I start with an improper fraction, to be honest, the fraction capabilities are not going to allow for mixed number conversion. However, what it will do is, I'm using the spacebar to separate here. If I do 4 1/5, that will convert a mixed number into an improper fraction, but it is not going to go the other way, okay? And again, the way that you would denote that would be to separate those with a space, and that can either be accessed with the space bar or oh, right. So if a student is working on a Chromebook or a laptop or a desktop of any kind and they have a spacebar accessible, they can separate between the integer portion and the fraction portion with a space from the spacebar. The workaround for students that are working on a tablet where that spacebar does not pop up is to start with the fraction portion, move the cursor back, and then put the integer portion out in front. And again, that can be converted back to an improper fraction as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. I want to, these are more questions for me than for you, but the feed is, we're just flooded, and I'm also getting emails, which is awesome. I appreciate folks reaching out. It appears that some folks are not able to get in even though they've registered, which is, I don't know why it's giving us a fit. We're capped at 10,000, and we have been bouncing between about 10:30 and 11:20, just kind of going up and down, up and down, up and down.
Okay.
For folks that are struggling maybe to get their colleagues in, anyone who is registered will receive the recording of today's webinar. My hope is to get that out via email tomorrow, and that will be something that you can forward on to others. I'm also hearing that, with repeated tries, folks can get in, but I understand that that is frustrating. I think we have just about broken this. I think everybody is just so excited that WebEx just can't keep up with us. So I want to address that because I know it's a frustration for folks, and I apologize. And we do have a workaround. That recording will be coming out for folks. A couple other just North Carolina testing specific things that I'm seeing in the chat. So this calculator is what we have embedded into our NCTest testing platform. And so that is available on iPads, on Chromebooks, or on secure browsers on desktops and laptops. So what will happen when kids are testing in through any of those NCTest platforms, and as a teacher, you can actually see this if you go into NCTest and you do one of the tutorials. Once you get past the calculator inactive, you'll see a little calculator button pop up in the upper right corner of the screen. The calculator that Dave is showing you today is the one that when kids click on that, they'll have access to, with the exception of this fraction mixed number conversion piece. That is turned off for elementary school students. However, students are still allowed to have a handheld calculator. We know that not everyone does their testing on our secure platform. We know that, there are some schools that still test with booklets. So, of course, that wouldn't be fair. Those kids can have a handheld calculator, even if your student is sitting and they're testing on a computer or a Chromebook or an iPad, and they prefer this calculator that we've embedded. They can also have a handheld calculator at their desk. We're not limiting them in any way. What we're doing is we are saying that these are available. And so these are going to be available for EOGs and also for the NC check-ins. All right, let me keep scrolling
Well,
through.
Beth, can I make just one clarification, just to be clear? So I don't want to confuse people, because I was showing people the scientific calculator with the fraction capabilities. And I think I'm right when I say this. The 3 to 5 test will use the 4-function calculator that is on my screen right now.
You are correct, Dave.
And that doesn't have fraction capabilities in the test, out of the test. It has no fraction capabilities at all.
Correct.
The one that I was showing that does, if you want to use that in your classroom, is the scientific calculator. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yes, and so that's the one that will be embedded. The 4-function, which is our focus today,
Right.
is the one that will be embedded for grades 3, 4, and 5. Dave showed
Great.
you a great kind of workaround if you want to introduce your kids to what they're going to be seeing once they get to middle school. But that is an option. That's not an option that's going to be available for testing.
Right.
All right, now I'm seeing, yes, the Desmos Calculator is available on iPads. It's also available through web browsers. There's also a Desmos app that the kids can download if they have smartphones, or, if they're using an iPad, they can either go through the web browser or they can go through the app.
That's right. If I could add one more thing to that too. So yeah. It works great on browsers on any mobile device. Pretty much almost identical experience to what you're seeing here, obviously with a different screen size. There is an app that is called the Desmos Test Mode app that teachers can sometimes use in class that kind of locks up a phone. But it does have a version of the 4-function calculator on there that is, again, identical to what you're seeing right here. And the advantage there is, if you might not have connectivity on a mobile device, that might be a good app to use. But again, the mobile experience through a browser on any sort of mobile device is going to be pretty much identical.
As far as handheld calculators, if students are on a device testing, that's a local decision as to whether or not to provide a handheld. Students will be taking a tutorial before they take any of their tests, whether it's the NC check-ins or the EOGs. And Desmos will not be used with paper and pencil tests. This will be used if we're using the NCTest browser. For those who are strictly remote, how will we know that our students are using the correct calculator? So if they are within the NCTest, if they're in the browser or if they are using the app, it's going to limit them. They're only going to be able to click on this 4-function calculator. And absolutely, we do encourage you to be using this with your students now, for them to be very comfortable with this. That's why we're doing this in the fall. We want this to be something that you're incorporating into your classroom regularly, that when it comes time to take a test, whether it's check-ins or EOGs, your students, this is something that's usual to them. This is something that they're comfortable with. And I think at this point, I have about filtered through the kind of the common questions that are popping up, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dave.
Great. I'm glad we stopped for a minute. There'll be time at the very end to ask questions on perhaps these topics or what we're going to be covering for the remainder of the session here too. And really what that gets into is, kind of readjust here a tiny bit. Oops. Yep. Back to here. So again, there's just a slide to remind you of the place where you can find the testing specifics on the Desmos site. But from this point, we're going to talk a little bit about how you could potentially use Desmos to teach in your classes, again, whether that be synchronous or asynchronous or virtual or in person. Now, we have a lot of folks in the session here today, and I'm going to show you a code for an activity. Now, I fear that if, the tool works great for 20 or 30 or even up to 100 students in a dashboard. But I have a fear that if we have a lot of people, over 200 or 300 in here, my computer actually might not be able to handle it. So here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to show a code here in a minute, and I'm going to see if this is going to work, because I need at least a handful of the participants to participate in this activity so that we have some meat to chew on here. So I'm going to ask that if your last name starts with, let's try to pick the middle of the alphabet, right? Let's go with, if your last name starts with an M. So if your last name starts with an M, I, humbly ask that you participate in this activity. If your last name does not start with an M, as mine does not, I will show you all of the slides that the participants would be seeing. So you'll see what they're going through, but hopefully this will allow us to kind of, keep the system a little bit more free in this time. So again, if your last name starts with an M, I humbly request that you use this code. Open up a new tab in your browser and type in student.desmos.com, and then type in M2MDXV, M2MDXV. And in a moment, I will take a look here, and perfect. And I encourage you to kind of proceed through the activity here. So I'm going to switch over here in a moment, and I will start showing you what they're seeing. We already have about 30 folks in there, which is great. Almost at 40. I feel like I'm on the Starship Enterprise. Can the engines take it? Can the ship take it? All right, we're doing okay. We're doing okay so far. So let me scooch over here and show you what we're looking at here. So here is the dashboard of that activity, okay? So what we see here is we see all of the participants floating in here. And let me show you right now, before I show you behind the scenes, let me show you what they're seeing. So I have a few screens that I've built up here. Let me go to the first one. First off, just asking, who are you and what are you teaching? I imagine the majority of you are going to be in the earlier grades, but just in case. The next one, I'm asking you to adjust the slider based on what you're feeling today, and then also to answer the simple question, what is a creature comfort that you miss in your life pre-quarantine? Then I had folks select some options about adjusting, letting us know what is your energy level like this year compared to last year? What is your time? What are your time capabilities like, or time, free time, planning time, like right now compared to last year? What is your stress level compared to last year? And then I have some other fun little geometric / fraction screens. This one, I love this activity called the quarter the cross, where the student is asked to shade in a quarter of this shape in any way they like. And the same activity for a triangle. And students are allowed to draw directly on the screen. So however they would like to, they can draw and shade in. They have a line tool as well. And then the final screen here is to just give me a little bit of a rating. And not for evaluatory purposes, but just to kind of demo and show how this screen could be used. Show me how you thought about just a little 4-function calculator demo that we just did. Okay. And you're going to see behind the scenes right now, as I go through and adjust some of these, we see a lot of dots on this dashboard right here. And that kind of shows that a student has completed what's going on in that screen. If that screen involves something that involves correctness, there will be a check or an X that will show. It looks something like this. A dash means there's really nothing on that screen. A dot means that they've simply completed something on the screen. It's possible that there is no correctness to judge. A cross or an X means that they are incorrect, and a check means that they are correct if that is possible to judge. A triangle, orange triangle, means that there is some sort of an error or there is something wrong with the way that they submitted something. Let me go back. And that guy. Yeah. And so I'm going to take a look at some of our responses here. I see that it is true that the vast majority of folks that are in this 82-person class are 3 to 5 teachers. And I can see a nice overlay here. If I hit overlay, I can see all of these graphs at once. And we have some folks across the board. And we see that, maybe a lot kind of over here in that upper half, in that upper quadrant. All right. Okay. Highlight that guy. Oh, man. Okay. All right. Go over here. So you're seeing behind the curtain a little bit, and I will explain all of these things very soon. We see a little overlay of all of our different energy levels here, an overlay of our time responses, and an overlay of our stress levels, which are through the roof, totally understandably. And then I see some interesting, all right, that's a good one there. Oh, I like that one. I think the computer's about to catch up with me. Okay. Then quartering the, oh man, I love, that's a great one right there. Oh, I like that one very much too. Let me go back in here. Okay, so you just saw me doing what I would be doing if students were doing this live. Then if it were time for me to talk about these with students, there is some extent to which through this dashboard and through this teacher tab that you're seeing in the upper right-hand corner, I can go through some of the teacher top-level views of everything, okay? And in some cases that is appropriate to do, and it makes sense to do that depending on the type of prompt you have, depending on the type of activity that we're choosing, of which you'll see a lot of these very soon. I'll show you kind of the place where you can sort through these if you don't already know about it. But something else that I did as you were watching was I was selecting some of these with this little camera icon, and I went to the snapshot screen. This allows me to kind of choose certain items and put them in a sort of slide deck that I can hit present. And as it turns out, we have a lot of huggers in the group, which makes a lot of sense. This is a great way to highlight a type of response that might have a lot of interesting, creative type of responses. And what we can do here is we can offer perhaps a prompt to the rest of the class if it's something that we're doing synchronously. If I click on this, I can see not only that response up close, but I can see everything from that student's screen where they explain why they think it works. And then as you can see, I actually love this one because this is a great example to show, you know, it has something to do with whether or not you're smartest, whether or not you see it, right? And to be honest, I struggled with this one a lot when I was trying this one. But I think this is a really great example if you can find the way to find those 4 triangles in there and then only shade one of them. Another great thing about showing from this angle is that I've turned on this tool that we have called Anonymize. And what it's done is it's turned all of your names into the names of notable, famous mathematicians. Some of them you might recognize. There's some bigger names than others, but a lot of them are a little bit more under the radar. And sometimes, depending on the class, depending on their interests, it's fun to Google some of these names and see what they're known for. And you see some very famous names like Isaac Newton, of course. Okay? If I hover over one of these names, it'll give me the student's name that they logged in on. Now, many of you logged in with just your first name, which is fine. And that's why that's what's showing. If I click on here, I could potentially see the name that the student, the email address that the student logged in on. I'll talk in a little bit about those logins and how that works as well. So this is the dashboard. This is where I can control things. If I wanted all of the students to go back to that quarter the cross activity, I can hit this pacing button and I can hit that one slide. Now, every student in the class is forced into that one slide so I can ask them to revisit something, or maybe there's one big mistake that students are making, okay? There's a little bit of slowness that might be because of an issue on the student side, perhaps, or just because this class is quite large. But usually they zoom right into that one. I can also increase the window. Let's say that I only want students working on these 2 shading activities. I can select only both of those at once, and the students cannot go outside of those 2 slides. I can also stop that at any time. I can also pause the entire class at any time. So all of those N last namers that are in there right now are seeing that their screen has gone dim, and they are not allowed to go out of any slide, and they are not allowed to edit anything else. This is great, especially if you are working with this synchronously, perhaps over video conferencing. A lot of times I will have students, if the student is able to, and depending on the age level or the ability level of the class and where we are, it can be tough to have students in a video conference and then also in a tab in the same browser. And some teachers have found ways to pull this off, and sometimes it's more of a challenge. But if I want the students to come back to that video conference session, I can hit pause, and that's going to kind of remind them, it's like, okay, I shouldn't be working on this anymore. Let's go back to the screen where the teacher was talking to me. And that's a good reminder to students for that. Another really neat thing that Desmos added shortly after everybody kind of went into quarantine back in March was the option to do written feedback, okay? So if I see a particular student's screen, and I want to give them some written feedback, there is a little icon here at the top of the screen, and if I click on that, I can open up, it's not exactly a chat because they can't respond to me in here. Oops. And I can type that in, hit enter, and now that student will see feedback. They'll get a little alert in their activity that there is a message for them, okay? As soon as the teacher sees it, so let's see if the teacher saw it, the teacher that's in this class. Oh, good, they did. So there's that little, go back here. It's difficult to see, but there's a little triangle up in the corner of that cell, and it's currently gray. That means the teacher saw it. As soon as I sent that message, the teacher would, the triangle would have been aqua. So you get some feedback if the student saw that written piece of feedback or not. I have found that this written feedback is awesome when I'm assigning activities for students to do asynchronously. In fact, the pacing and the pause are really, really good for asynchronous activities that I assign to students because I can control exactly which slides they're on at certain times. Maybe I only want them to do the first 5 slides before class asynchronously, and then when we come together, we'll do the rest. If I see them working asynchronously, maybe at the end of a day, I can add some written feedback, and I know that when we come back to that activity, they'll see that written feedback. So this written feedback tool and the pacing and the pause are awesome asynchronous tools I have found. Let me bump out of this and show you a little bit about teacher.desmos.com and how all of these activities kind of work together. So by the way, before I get out of this, we can see some other options. If I click up here, this will take me back to the general activity page that's outside of this dashboard. But I can also share this dashboard with a co-teacher. Many of you may be working with co-teachers. And you can formally connect a co-teacher to your Desmos account, and then it's easy for you to share this so that there can be 2 teachers, or yeah, I think we can do more than 2 teachers even, sharing the same dashboard, controlling it, adding comments, controlling the pacing together, so that you can tag team on this as it would often make sense to do. All of these activities, of course, are housed at teacher.desmos.com. That can be linked off of the desmos.com front page as well. Okay, so here at teacher.desmos.com, we see a lot of things, but mostly these are all links to individual activities, okay? So, for example, I'm going to go to custom just because this is the activity that I just ran with you. So this is like the generic page for this activity. And I can see all of the screens that we went through, and I can also see this one row here for the session that we all just ran together. If I'm at an activity page that I found at teacher.desmos.com, and I want to begin running the session with my class, I'd hit assign, and then I'd hit single session code. It's interesting because you also see these classes, which are the classes I'm currently teaching. And you see a little Google Classroom icon here. Desmos recently added integration so that you can create a full class of students within Desmos. And that way you can, instead of having students type in a code, which is what you saw yourselves doing during this session today, you can immediately push it out to their class so that when they log into student.desmos.com, they will immediately see this activity waiting for them. If your school uses Google Classroom, if you use Google Classroom with your classes, you can formally link your Google Classroom class to Desmos so that when you start a new session, it'll immediately push it out to their Google Classroom page, and the roster will automatically sync back and forth. So if you add a student to Google Classroom, they'll automatically be added to your Desmos class. If you want to know more about that, and really any of the things I've just mentioned in this portion, it's all here in the Teaching with Desmos section on the notes page that I shared with you. A few things that we talked about, and honestly a few things that we didn't talk about yet. But this idea about this topic of classes in Google Classroom is right there. Awesome.
Let me interrupt for just a second.
Please.
Do we know, do we have the ability to embed the Desmos Calculator within Canvas?
That's a good question. There is Canvas integration. There isn't formal, so this classes feature does not yet sync with Canvas, but there are ways to embed, there are ways to embed graphing calculator screens within Canvas, which is probably not specifically relevant to the audience for this webinar, which is understandable. In that case, if you're using Canvas, in order to create a class in Desmos, it is as simple as having, you'd create a class and they would create one of those codes that the students in your class would enter one time, and then they're in that class forever. And then in that sense, it works where you could assign it to a class and the student would see it show up at student.desmos.com, but not yet would it show directly on Canvas.
All right. I'm seeing a couple questions about being able to use within SchoolNet. Yes, I was in there the other day, and you do have the ability to add the Desmos Calculator within SchoolNet. We've got a couple questions about, is this something that we are supposed to use so that the kids, are aware of it with testing? Are we being asked to use this on a day-to-day basis? And the answer is that we are providing this as an option. When kids take the standardized tests for the state of North Carolina, so for grades 3 through 5, we're talking about NC check-ins or the end of grade tests. The calculator that North Carolina has embedded into our NCTest secure browser and app, and so that's available on iPads, on Chromebooks, or on desktops and laptops. The embedded calculator is the Desmos calculator. And so what we're trying to do this fall is we're trying to provide some of Dave's experience and expertise, trying to show ways that you can use it as you might be doing some remote teaching or your kids are doing synchronous and asynchronous learning, something so that, when it comes time to test, this is not something that's foreign to your kids. Students, regardless of whether they take paper and pencil tests or if they do testing online, students will be able to use a handheld calculator if they prefer. Dave, we've got a couple questions about what you'll be sharing with folks at the end of the session. Can you speak to that for a moment?
In terms of what resources?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm glad you asked. I want to point you over to, well, let me show you two places, because I showed you a lot about sort of, again, an introduction to kind of how a dashboard or running a dashboard would look and how all that goes. But the big question is, what activities are available and how would I find activities? And another level of question would be, can I customize these and can I make my own? These are all good questions, and you might be at different levels of that, which is fine. The short answer is that the activity kind of central place is here at teacher.desmos.com. And you can see a lot of places where you can find activities geared towards a lot of different grade levels and subjects and all those sorts of things. To kind of focus your search a little bit better, I've created some collections, or I've kind of collected some collections for you. And those are actually down here in the resources page near the end. And there are 3 that I would like to point you towards. Here's one, this first one, elementary grades activities. I'll click on that and show you what that looks like. So this is a collection, which is really just a curated list of activities that usually kind of hover around maybe one subject or one grade level. So these are some activities. This is a selection created by Desmos with 9 activities, but 9 grade activities. Everything from adding whole numbers and integers, telling time, working with basic quadrilaterals and advanced quadrilaterals, fractions, shaded rectangles, and decimal challenge. So if I click on one of these, again, you'll see a page very similar to what I just showed you. You can preview the screens. I'd strongly recommend that you go through the activity to see how it works. A lot of these slides are interactive with each other. And then I can use this to start a session, either a one-time session or connect it to one of the classes I may have already integrated into my account. Let me show you 1 or 2 of these other collections that I made. This second one is a little bit more robust. There's a lot more in here. This is one I collected from interesting elementary grades activities that I've seen for a while. There's 27 activities in here. Now, the other side of that is that there are activities created by Desmos. These have a lot of polish on them, and they are built with a lot of great pedagogy in mind. And there's other ones in here which are also created by a lot of folks that I know and that are also great activities, but they don't quite have that same polish that some of the Desmos activities do. So just keep that in mind, the ones that are created by Desmos. So if I click on one of these, for example, I'll see this fraction activity. I can go through it and see how that works, and then I can also start a session on that. So that's linked in that resource document. And then there's yet another one in here that is not a collection at all, but it's just in the form of a Google spreadsheet with even more activities. These are roughly grouped by grade level and topic, and strand rather. Okay? So these might be interesting for you to check out as well. So a lot to look at for sure.
And Dave, we're getting a question. Was there a bit.ly that you had, or have you yet to share the bit.ly that's going to have that information?
Absolutely. Sorry for that. The bit.ly is right here, bit.ly/NC4function. Should be on every page of this one right here. Yep. bit.ly/NC4function. Everything's lowercase.
Awesome.
And that will take you to that Google Doc.
Excellent. All right, I've got a couple questions. I'm slowly making my way through the feed. Originally I dealt with sort of the connection issues, but Dave, if you wouldn't mind, can you throw presenting back to me for a minute so that I can address? As I went back and looked, I saw a lot of comments about Texas Instruments calculators. North Carolina does not endorse any of the calculators. We provide options. And so what I'd like to do is I would like to share. Oops. Dave, can you try again? Oh, hold on. Let's see. Can you try to pass it back to me again? It's not wanting to let me share my screen.
Huh. Well, I stopped sharing.
Oh, I gotcha.
Okay, great.
I got it. All right. So I'm going to show you guys this. Dave showed this at the beginning. That's the page where it lists the information specific to North Carolina. And so I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on the 4-function calculator. And this is the calculator that he's been sharing with us today. I want to go back, and I want to share this PDF with you. And so as he mentioned a couple times, what North Carolina allows on the test is, as a state, we can specifically turn on and off features. And so after I saw that string of Texas Instruments calculator questions, I went in and I pulled, and I want to kind of draw your attention to here. So on the standard calculator for the 4-function Desmos calculator, the converting fractions and decimals has been disabled. North Carolina has chosen to enable that for testing. So for those folks who were concerned about the equity piece of handheld calculators allowing the fraction decimal conversions and the embedded four-function calculator not allowing that, North Carolina has addressed this here. So if you go to the Desmos screen and you're pulling up just the Desmos four-function calculator, it's not going to allow this conversion. If you go and you pull the one specific to North Carolina, you are going to have that ability. So what I'm going to try to do now, I'm going to go back here, and this is, do you see at the top here where it says North Carolina NCTest version? So I'm going to do, I think you did 21/5 earlier, I believe.
Yeah.
And you can see here, we have 4.2, and by clicking this little toggle button, which he was showing you using the
scientific calculator, yeah.
North Carolina did choose to enable that for North Carolina testing. So for those of you who were concerned, I appreciate you reaching out and putting that in the chat. And I did do a little bit of research while Dave was talking, and I just want to kind of soothe everyone and let you know that we've not taken anything away. We've not made any changes. This is just an calculator. What is on the standard Desmos calculator is a little different than what we allow for testing.
I'm so sorry, Beth. I completely flipped that when I read it, and I caused you some trouble, and I really apologize for that.
That's okay. I was so focused on dealing with the connectivity issues, I kind of let that one go for a minute.
I'm so sorry. That's my fault.
Before we left, I wanted to address that.
Thank you very much. I apologize.
No worries. We got it before folks left. The other thing I want to just reassure people is that we are recording this today. My goal is to send it out to everybody tomorrow. It takes WebEx a little bit to create the video. For anyone who is registered, that is something where I can go in and just like you got the reminder emails that the webinar was coming up, I should be able to just send that email, send the recording out. I will also include that bit.ly link that Dave's been using today with all of those great resources he's curated for you all. So I just wanted to go over that one more time as we're starting to kind of wrap up today. Dave, let me flip it back to you if there's anything else that you would like to share, and I'm going to cruise through the chat feed again.
Got it. I appreciate that. And again, let me just apologize one more time. I'm so sorry. I totally misread that designation, and but I'm glad I am glad we cleared it up. And keep in mind, so I mean, it might definitely be advantageous for you to want to use that the just the four function in terms of the fraction and the decimal capabilities. So let me just remind you one more time that the place to find that is just go to the front page of Desmos, scroll down here to assessments, although they're also right here in resources right at the top. Assessments, find North Carolina, and then it's this calculator. Now this link is the link. So if you wanted to post that for students and send it directly out to students, that will take them directly to it. There's no need for a student to go through all of those different menus to find it. That is the official calculator link that will work for them in any of those situations, okay? Excuse me. The only other thing I had left that I can sort of briefly introduce you to if you're interested in it is the ability to build and customize lessons, activities. And on the notes, there is a brief explanation that kind of gets into how you can start getting into this sort of situation. But something that is probably most useful, especially for a lot of teachers, is just to see how you can merge different activities. So let's say this decimal challenge activity we really liked, but there might be something else you want to add to it. And let me point out to you, this might be especially good in an asynchronous or a virtual setting. Right here on the front page, Desmos has created a lot of starter screens that some of them aren't even really mathematically specific, but they are just intended to be there to help check on students' well-being, which is something that's a little bit harder to do since we're so far away from each other in some cases. So if we click on one of these, you can see some opportunities for us to see, you know, this is one of the ones that I used in the activity today. And there's just a few of these that are just kind of check-in sort of screens that you can use, right? So let's say I really like this screen and I want to use it. There's this icon right here. If I click this, it'll copy this activity. So if I go back to that activity that I was in, and I'm like, I want to edit this. Going over here to the 3 dots, and I smash that copy and edit button. This will make a brand new copy of this activity that's just for me. It won't screw up anything that Desmos has done before. And now you can see this is where these can be edited, okay? It looks not too dissimilar from maybe a PowerPoint or a Google Slides editing atmosphere with the slides on the top instead of along the side. Now, this looks like a lot, and you might not want to get your hands dirty with this, but all I'm going to do right now is paste. I'm going to use Command V as my paste command. I'm going to drag that slide back to here. Editing, pasting through edit should do the exact same thing. And now this screen is at the beginning of this fraction activity, or I'm sorry, it's a decimal activity that I want to give to my students. So now when they see it, this is a version that's just for me that I've edited. And now this check-in screen is the first screen the students will see when you assign it to them when they log in. And you can add your own screens and play around with the different components all you like. If you want to make your own activity from scratch and start playing around with that, just go to Custom, New Activity, and you're on your way. It'll start with a blank environment, and on each screen, I can add a note, I can add a possibility for text input, I can add an image if that's something I want to do, and I can hit preview. I don't have an image in here yet. You can kind of see sort of the basics of how this would look. There is a lot, as you can imagine, a lot you can do and a very high ceiling that you can interact with in terms of how to build activities and see how custom activities go. And there is a ton of documentation and resources on our page for that, okay? And you can see some how-tos about copying and editing entire activities, copying and pasting screens into your activities, which we also just talked about. And if I go back to our main page, and we can see learn.desmos.com, where you will find resources not just for the 4-function calculator, but also for using activities, creating your own activities. And there's an endless supply of videos and how-tos about everything that we talked about today and much more.
Dave, we've got a question about what teachers are allowed to upload. Is there a limit to what they're allowed to upload? Like, for example, maybe a video file?
Nope, not that I'm aware of. And video files, for better or for worse, do have to be uploaded. You can certainly paste a link to something like a YouTube video, but in order to make sure that it works consistently, they like to host the videos within the activity. And I'm not aware of a limit. That doesn't mean one doesn't exist. But I've seen some videos that are a few minutes long, to be sure, in these activities. I can't promise that an hour-long video or even a half-hour-long video would work within the activity, but I'm not aware of a limit.
All right, what about, is there a limit to the number of slides that you can have?
No, but I will say, to be honest, depending on the context you're using it in, once an activity gets to, like, 40 or 50 slides, it does get to be kind of an arduous activity for a student. And that's more of a design question, but there is no limit that I'm aware of for the number of slides.
And what about, is there a way that you can share something that you yourself have made with a colleague?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked, because this is really how a lot of activities get shared, right? So this is the, I'll go to this one. It doesn't really matter which one I use. So this is that, like, a sort of home page for where the activity lives, right? And this is the one, actually, I'm sorry, but let me go to, I'll go to this one. Okay, great. This is the one that we used in the session today. So there's a URL up here, and I can copy and paste that URL, text it to somebody, email it to somebody, create a collection that I can share with somebody, and they will get this exact same page. They can run their own sessions. That'll be only part of their page. They can copy and edit. That will only be for them. It'll be their own version of it. So this URL is the place to be able to share that. If I click these three dots, there's also an option to hit share activity here. And that will, again, really just give me the same URL, but it gives me the option to share it on social media if you want to go directly to that.
All right. Well, I am not seeing any new questions pop in that we've not addressed the past couple minutes. So is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up, Dave, before I kind of go over those common questions one more time before we log off?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, nothing specific otherwise, except legitimately, if you have questions, feel free to email me directly. This is my email address. You can contact me on Twitter. One more thing that I would encourage you to do, I'll throw this right here at the bottom. Please fill out a survey at bit.ly/Desmos survey. And that will just give us some feedback on this session and how you thought it went.
All right, and I am going to put that in the chat for everyone, if that's easy.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
So just to, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for taking time out of your day. I know at the end of the school day, it's tough to sit for an hour, but hopefully you, this is something that is going to be helpful for you and helpful for your students. Very appreciative of Dave for taking his time to work with us today and for the documents he's created that are specific for grades 3 through 5 teachers and their students. I want to address just a couple questions that have come up time and time again. I have recorded today's session. It takes WebEx a bit to process the recording. My hope is to be able to send that out to everyone who registered tomorrow. When I send that out, I will also include the bit.ly link that Dave has shared with you that has his folder of activities that he's referenced throughout this session. It has his agenda. It has everything that you're seeing on his screen right now. It has links to all different kinds of activities. That link will be available for you if your colleagues were not able to get on today, which we were capped at 10,000. I'm not sure why we were having some problems, and I do apologize, and I'm going to investigate that. But you'll be able to share that recording with your colleagues, with your staff. You'll also have access to everything that Dave did. You'll have the video recording, and we hope that that will help you to kind of spread the word to others and incorporate these great tools that are completely and totally free. That's one question I kept seeing today is how much does this cost? How much? Totally free. And this is something that we do embed in our NCTest testing applications. So that's the app for the iPad, for the Chromebooks, and then the web browsers. I also want to remind you all that we address some of those the fraction decimal conversions. Again, if you'll go to the Dave, can you click over there for us again?
Oh, sure. To the North Carolina calculator?
Yes, if you would. If you'll show them how to access that North Carolina test since you're still kind of driving. The calculator that we are embedding on the North Carolina test, so the NC check-ins and the EOGs, it does have the ability for kids to do the fraction decimal conversions. And so you'll know that if you'll look at his web address at the top, it says North Carolina there in the address. And it also says in that green bar at the top, North Carolina NCTest version. So that is there. We have not taken away any of the calculators that typically have been allowed for North Carolina testing. This is an option. And because this is embedded in our NCTest, this is something where we want to just make teachers aware of the many different ways you can incorporate this in your classrooms, whether you're meeting remotely or you're meeting with kids in your rooms, or whether you're doing synchronous or asynchronous learning. We want this to be a tool that can kind of ease things for you. Dave's given you his contact information. If you have further Desmos questions, you are also welcome to hit me up. You have my email from when you signed up for the session, and you should be getting an email from me tomorrow with a link. We welcome your questions, and we are here to support you in any way we can. And again, we thank you for choosing to teach. We thank you for working with kids, particularly as crazy as things are right now. Your time and your love and your appreciation is very much appreciated by everybody at the state level. Thanks again, guys. We're going to sign off. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.